Ei ole todellista. Mikä tässä nyt on?
No, creo que no.
¿Dónde lo vas a poner?
¿Mm?
¿Dónde lo pondrás?
Aquí, ¿no?
Hello to everybody. Now it's 3 o'clock, so we will start with our democracy talk. Please be free to turn on your cameras. And before we start, I would like to introduce myself. Many of you already know me. I will be moderating the session today. My name is Diana Trevino. I'm project manager at UCAN, and we are partners of the Democrat Project. And while the aim of our democracy talks is really to create synergies between projects that work on education for democracy and also researchers and experts on the topic. So we are very happy that we have our 25th talk today. We invited today Monica Pasur and also Lea Spahn. Lea Spahn, I don't know if she's today here. I think she did. She is here. I see her. So welcome you also very much, Lea. So Lea Spahn is from the Philipps University of Marburg and Monica Pasur of the University of Zagreb. Both are partners of the AECED project. So we already had a democracy talk about the project, but this was more focusing on the project in general. And today you both, Monica and Lea, will speak about embodied democracy. And I'm very much looking forward to your very interesting approach to have a look on education for democracy. And in the end, then we will have some time for questions you might have. I have prepared some questions. So thank you very much to both of you for joining. I would hand over directly to you. You can start sharing your presentation. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this introduction. And we are very welcomed that you have again give the AC project to show some of our results and some of our thoughts and things that we discuss sometimes daily. As you have introduced me, my name is Monica Pasur. I'm coming from Faculty for Teacher Education of University of Zagreb, and I'm one of our institution is one of the partners in ACID project. Myself, as a background, I have a PhD in education, and I have been dealing with the education for democracy for years now. But I think as an introduction, but you already heard about that, then in ACID project, a very big value is given that we have experts from different social sciences and even wider, and that give us an options to see our data from different perspectives, and I'm going to talk about more of them today, not just from the education part. I think Lea can maybe introduce herself when we come to the part where she will talk, so maybe we could start now. So we decided for this democracy talk to talk about embodied democracy because we see this specific element as something very important coming from our project and something very connected to what we have been doing. Let's maybe start from the widest idea of democracy, and that is like, citizens have their voices, citizens have an option to vote, to be part of decision-making process even. And seeing like that, the democracy is seen very static. Yes, of course, there is a change of people who are making decisions. There is a change of people who want to be at local authorities and national authorities. But it's seen just as citizens who are here to find the best solutions for them, who will lead them. However, we see democracy much more dynamic. We see it as not needed to have good leaders, but needed to have people who are able to cooperate, to live together, and somehow to experience democracy. That is, of course, not something that we found out. Dewey talked about it, Biesta talked about it. Many previous theoreticians in democracy field have talked about living democracy, but we wanted to come to the bottom of democracy, and I would say that the bottom is in the individual, in the person. who he is, who she is, and what he feels, what he senses in his body, in emotions, is very much connected with democracy. And it helps the person not only to understand better democracy, like here one student has said, but also it helps him or her to understand better others and other experiences. So we saw the dynamics of democracy as an option for people to feel together, to act together, and then to learn how to share responsibility and care for each other. Here we have summed up some elements of embodied democracy, but what is important to say is that we didn't came up with this theory before and then try to see how it works in practice. But when we were in our research, and it was participatory action research in 19 cases in all countries, 6 countries involved in the project, we saw and talked and discussed and reflect with our participants between ourselves. We discussed, and then we saw the elements of theory in what we were seeing in a practice. And somehow we came to the bottom of the pedagogy and education, and that is that in their practice and theory can't be separated. And we really saw that, because when we started to work with our participants in our cases, we saw that democracy really is non-linear. And that was very, very important, as Biesta was saying, that democracy could not happen in a linear way. And often education today, and therefore education for democracy, is seen very linear, is seen like, yes, we have people, students who are introduced into education, and they move through education linearly through classes, and we give this person some input, and we wait for them to show us that they have some output based on what we have taught them. And we taught them that knowledge is very statical, that knowledge is what we say today, the same thing is the same in the end of the year, and the same thing is the same in the end of their educational path. And that is completely not applicable for democracy and democratic education, because democracy has many perspectives, coming from, like Green say, multiple perspectives, coming from different eyes, from different experiences, from different feelings. And these perspectives could not be seen linear. They must be seen like a dynamical space, and it gives us options to learn about ourselves, as Freire says, an identity. But what is very important in this embodied democracy is opening spaces for possibility, for imagining different future. And this is that critical engagement. Yes, somebody is feeling not good in what is happening now. Somebody has bad experiences. How we can imagine together something different? And an important part for this, based on these elements, is this disposition for democracy. When here is openness, reflexivity, responsibility, and solidarity, we don't want to say that education for democracy is making this possible, but this is needed. This safe space was needed in order for people to be able to share their thoughts, their feelings, and their body movements. They needed openness, and they needed solidarity. And they realized in some cases that the other participants and even researchers need solidarity. And they were somehow pushed to learn how to be even more open to some things that they maybe weren't open before enough. So why does it matter? We somehow summed up here just few ideas and tried to again connect it with some theories developed before. What we have seen very shortly in our cases, but much more when we try to go through our data, is that introducing embodied and aesthetic methods while discussing about democracy really challenges some traditional hierarchies in education. And I don't talk only about countries where hierarchy is very high still, that you have a professor and students, but in every country, there was some hierarchy that was being visible. And with these methods, participants started to discuss it. So somehow we could connect it with pedagogy of the oppressed, with giving somebody voice, and for someone to recognize its position and wanting to change that position, to react differently, to do something differently. And that was a very important part, because some traditional structures in education didn't give you an option to be engaged fully. And if you want to get engaged fully, in full capacity, with your emotions, with cognitive, with your body, with everything you feel, you needed to move beyond some traditional hierarchies. And that was starting point for people to create empathy and responsibility. But what would I highlight as the most important? Sense of belonging. They start to sense that they belong to some institution, to some group of people, that they belong to the community they are part of. And when you start to feel that you belong, you actually start to care. You want others in that community to feel good. And you want to hear different perspectives, because you start to realize how much you don't know, because you know only your experiences. And we had cases where participants actually asked each other, can you please share your perspective? And there was no more this wall that is often present in educational classrooms, that they didn't want to speak. There was often, and one of the results is that we had too little time to discuss topics, that this structure of time was not good for trying to work in the other way. Very important element of why does it matter is an element of pedagogy of discomfort. Megan Boller, in her book Education and Emotions, talk about emotions that are not welcomed in education. And those are pretty much all emotions that are connected with some negative feelings, like anger, or being vulnerable or feeling helpless. You are not able to show these emotions. And she argues that emotions are not part of the education because people present them as something individual and private and belonging to a person. But she argues that emotions are very much public. And everybody in education knows which emotions are they not allowed to show and who is not allowed to show these emotions. And actually, this is very much related to power relations in education. So what we have discussed a lot after we saw our results and after our work with participants is that we need emotions in educational system, especially in education for democracy. Because if always we are happy and everything that is happening we all agree with, we can't move, we can't see these dynamics of democracy, and we can't grow. And actually, this pedagogy of discomfort, feeling not comfortable in some moments, is what created the best moments and the greatest data in our projects. And when I talk about discomfort, I don't talk only about participants. I talk about us as researchers the same. We also had the moments of discomfort. We also didn't know how to react to something that was happened, to some topic, to some situation. But from that, we learned the most. And that was very important for us. And finally, we saw that when we and our participants start to implement transformative dialogue, listening to each other in order to change our behaviors and who we are and to grow, the hope emerged. We saw that the change is really possible And the change is starting in the same time from ourselves, from others, from the group, from the institutions. So this hope somehow was a net that connected these multiple perspectives, and we all envisioned some better future together and thought about what as an individual and what as a group we can do to move towards this better future, which actually democracy should be, of course, all about. Now Leah will take on with some practical examples, and then I will just shortly conclude in the end.
Yes, thank you very much, Monica. I will also introduce myself very shortly. I'm very happy to be here today. This is my first day actually back in working after maternity leave. And so this is like a special introduction back into work. Yes, I'm part of the university or the team at the Philipps University in Marburg. I'm myself trained also in education, and I have a PhD especially focusing on, well, discussing aging in societies related to dance practice and movement practices. So I'm focusing my work on movement education and dance. On the one hand, I'm also a freelancer in performative arts, also focusing on the aging body, but also working in rural spaces in Germany. And on the other hand, in this research project and teaching future teachers. So today, as Monica has already introduced very nicely, the ACID project has really shifted attention from understanding democracy as an institutionalized way of governing yourself only or a nation, from also shifting the attention from sort of political education that's very much about knowing about systems and ways of living together, towards the embodied dimension of democracy as lived practice and also as embodied experience. This is also stated by Amanda Machin, who I'm citing here, in saying that bodies are not only disciplined by politics in a way that is about oppression or about navigating, orientating people or a people, but really contribute to politics by sensing, by being affected, by being engaged and somehow also vulnerable. So in a way, she says, they do not only put limits upon rational discussion, they also, the bodies produce opportunities, and that there is a symbiotic relation between democratic interaction and bodily experience. So we've been trying to really focus on these on the interactive and embodied dimension. And I will go a little bit more into what we have done in our cases. Thank you, Monica. So a peek into practice. I'm going to present 3 different examples. The first one will focus on body fullness exercises, which reminds a little bit about mindfulness on the one hand, but really we want to shift also here into diving into the bodies as felt experience. This is an example from our Finnish colleagues. And Fastland Slowland is an exercise they're practiced within a group of teachers in education. And you can imagine a room full of people where there's different parts sketched on the floor that introduce you or invite you to move at a specific pace. So this is a movement improvisation exercise where on one side of the space, you move very quickly. This is Fastland. And on the other, when you transition into another part of the space, you start to slow down. And there's a third place where you just move at your own pace. So this is an example, only one of many, where we engage with participants, but also invite participants to develop their own imaginations and exercises to sense into one's own body, to allow people and participants, students, to arrive into a space and to arrive into their bodies by sensing into them. Interestingly enough, sensing into oneself is usually also a moment of becoming responsive to others, becoming responsive to the other bodies in movement. And what our colleague Paulina Jakselainen has highlighted very nicely is that sensing and attuning to one's own body is usually also an ignition to reflect. What am I comfortable in? Where do I feel drawn to? How do I engage with others? How do I perceive space differently? And this is one way of engaging into or of focusing in the body as democratic actor and embodied approaches towards democratic learning. We can move on one more. Another approach in like a large variety of approaches has been drama and improvisation. I will, yes, this is a quote from a participant from the Latvian material gathered. And I will just read it out loud and then say a little bit more about the context. In our movement exercise, we experience that leadership is not about control, but shared influence. As we switched between leading and following, the leader guides with care, while the follower remains engaged, and through this exchange, both adapt, listen, and shape the interaction together. Just like in a democracy, true power lies not in dominance, but in connection, mutual respect, and the ability to step into both roles. So here we see another approach based on group interaction or partnering work where people shift roles. And I think this also highlights again that it's not about very inventive, large-scale methods only, but it's also about very simple methods that invite people to reflect their own perspective, their own situatedness, and also the ability to act within that frame, to change it, and to feel into another, like to step into the shoes of someone else, and to see how that feels. Drama and improvisation has always an aspect of playfulness and invention. So this has also been a very insightful experience observing, but also exploring this within the case research, that this aspect of playfulness invited people to reflect, but also to engage with others in new ways. And then lastly, from the German team, there has been one case on commoning, using the pattern language of commoning, which is a card deck, which was developed by Silke Helfrich and David Boulier. Commoning here really has this threefold imagination of democracy being an economy of care, being social well-being, or focusing on social relations, but also on self-governance. And so this card deck is 33 cards that have different patterns about how groups interact with each other. And they can be laid out, they can be applied in group situations, inviting, first of all, voicing something. They are an opportunity to articulate perceptions and experiences. They are, second, also a tool for shifting attention, switching between the self and also the wholeness, being a group, being an organization, being a whole institution, perhaps. And thirdly, triggering imagination and co-creation, where we put an attention to co-creation because it is really also a very promising tool for organizational transformation. which is also an aspect that came about very nicely in the research, that embodied democracy is not only applicable within education and in the classroom, but also as tool for changing organizations and even educational, the understanding of educational organizations. So I hope I was able to give you a little bit a peek into different cases and their approach in research, and also different methods that were applied to come to the points that Monica has illustrated so nicely.
So just to conclude what we have said, as Leah has shown, we have within the cases used words, bodies, feelings, collages. We have used everything to help people to live this vision of democracy as something that a person is coming only on the cognitive level, and to invite them to become fully the part of the process of education. And what was visible in all the cases, in every country, not based on the method, that very soon we as researchers and participants together with us as co-researchers came up with the vision that the democracy needs to be whole, that we have to have a person, a structure, and a practice working together in order to be able to open to each other, to create safe space, and to envision this transformation that we all want to see in democracy. Maybe I would just conclude with in pedagogy, we often say that when we work with our students, we say to them, there is no recipe. You can't have recipe to know what needs to be done. And I think that in using aesthetic and embodied methods in education for democracy, this is right more than ever. We had 19 cases and very, very much many participants. But every researcher and every participant were completely unique. And this encounter with anybody was very unique. And you have to be prepared to be out there in the wind, in the sun, in the rain, and try to respond to what is happening. And be aware that people are able to co-create society where we can all move towards more democratic one. And part of this, there must be emotions, there must be feelings. And the feeling is, even if you are standing still and something happened inside of you, this is also very much embodied because you feel it in your whole body. And this embodiment must be part of education, because we are showing the people that we care for them like that, and that we care for their senses and feelings. So I think we could stop now, and we are ready for all of your questions to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica and Leah, very much for your, I think, very interesting presentation, I must say. Because if I understand it correctly, a core message is also from you to say that we need to combine knowledge-based and logical types of learning with emotional learning. And we are very much focusing now in schools like the content-related learning. We learn about facts and contents, very broad contents, but we don't learn how to connect this with our emotions. So I think it's very, very interesting. I would like to invite everybody here in Zoom, but also maybe someone who's in YouTube watching, to raise your questions if you might have, or comments you would like to address. So please feel free. If not, I would start with my, I see Andreas, you would like to ask a question? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting examples. And what I'd like to add is to example 2, where it was about following and leading. As a theater practitioner, I can add that there is even a third relation that is losing these two positions of following and leading, and is to come into resonance through it is not clear anymore who is leading and who is following. So just to use this following and leading method to get into a connection where it is not clear anymore who is leading and who is following. And in this third part of this method, there happens something new, and it's not anymore. It can't be anymore related to this was the idea of this person or that person, but it's true interaction, and so it's kind of state of media passive or media active, which is not anymore related to this following and leading question, but to develop as a unity. So that was just to add from this experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think this is exactly one of the points that I try to capture in this aspect of playfulness, because at some point you don't rely on these positions anymore. I would completely agree with you. I think that's the very fun but also very interesting part, that when you ask people then where did you feel more comfortable or did you feel okay as a person who led, then normally they say, well, it was very hard because they never did what I wanted them to do. And seeing that, I'm referring to an experience that I do a lot in dance, where people are connected through a long piece of wood, and then they lead each other, for instance. And then it's really interesting to see that leading and following really sort of intervene into one another. And I think that playfulness and that third sort of open becoming with each other, perhaps, is a very interesting moment with a lot of potential for discussion then later. Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I would raise a question. If you have any questions in the Zoom, please just raise your hand or jump in. But you explained it, both you, Monica, and also Leah, that of course emotions are very important when it comes to learning democracy. But maybe you could explain a bit further why also negative emotions are very important for learning about democracy. Maybe you can give an example on this. Because I think we're living in a society where negative emotions are very much dismissed from our lives very often. So maybe you can say a few words on this.
Yeah, maybe I can start, so Leah can jump in if she will want to. We have when this specifically in the work of higher education, where we started to go for our data, we have seen that our participants have very much already know all the rules of education, and they very much know what they can say and what they can't say. And I will go to example of one student in Croatia. Croatia is a specific country. She said at one moment, I like these encounters because finally I can show that something makes me angry or sad, or that something I don't feel comfortable, and when I discuss about it, you will see anger in my face. You will see that I become red, and I start to talk more faster. And last time when I talked like this with the teacher about something, she said, I see you are very emotional about this topic, and this is very unpolite from you. And like Boler, she says she is not allowed to show this discomfort because then she is against the authority of the teacher. She doesn't like what teacher is saying. And that student, she said, but in democracy, it's normal that I have some values. I have been growing up in a small rural place, only surrounded by my family and friends, and we all have some values. And now I'm learning something more, something different. And of course, I don't want to just leave this out and say, yes, I agree with everything you have said. And that was a very interesting moment, because when you think about it, and then later I start to think about it more. And I asked even my 5-year-old daughter a few days before this, I asked her, which emotions are you not allowed to show in preschool? And she said, anger. And I said, but why? Who is allowed to show anger? And she said, teacher, she is allowed to show that she is angry, but I'm not allowed to show it. And this is like with emotions, we show who is allowed to say, to show something and who is not allowed. And when we talk about democracy, if we don't talk about political education, that is very cognitive, we talk about values and we talk about beliefs, and we should be open to see that something makes somebody not feel good. It's not because this person is bad. It's because those are these values, and this is the moments we can learn from. I will give just one more example of one teacher. He is already of one teacher that is working in the school. And during the focus group, he said, I feel so relieved. I can finally say I'm against the inclusion. And this is something you don't want to hear in education for democracy, of course, because it's all about inclusion. But he said, it's so hard. I don't feel confident to work with these children. I don't know how to do it. I feel like I'm failing every and each day. And here, for the first time, I feel I'm allowed to say this thing that is very much connected with my teacher identity. And I was not allowed to say it anywhere else. And they said that very important for them was hearing each other's stories and getting each other's support, even without us as researchers, even without the theory. Just being able to say something and to talk about emotion, that was already very revealing for them.
Thank you.
Yes, I think I'll just add just a little bit. I think Monica's example are very telling about why we need negative emotions, or also this moments of discomfort. And I think it's exactly this embodied dimension with a focus on the body as also a capable giver of signals of and a foundation of why am I touched by something. Like really, bodies are, always being touched by something. They are affected. They are always in some kind of resonance with their surrounding. And I think listening to the embodies in their resonance, in their responsiveness, is a true key to allow young students or students of every age to grow into responding truthfully and also courageously to moments and intervene. I think that's a very daring moment to say, I'm not like, I do not like this, or as Monica says, I feel like I'm failing and I need to articulate it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. Carsten, you raised your hand.
We don't hear you yet.
You are muted, Carsten.
I found the presentation very interesting, but I have a problem with the issue of emotions here, because I missed. You are talking about emotions, how to show emotions, and everything else. But the problem, or my problem here, is in the next step: what you are doing with emotions, how the emotions then are related in some way to rationality, because democracy is also rationality. And so this I missed in the presentation. What is the next step? You are experiences with emotions, but how they are later introduced in democratic processes. This is what I missed in this presentation.
Thank you for your question. Leah, do you want me to start, or do you want maybe start first with this one?
I could start and you can jump in, Monica.
Okay, great.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think that's a really important one because how do we, well, emotions break perhaps up and then they're in the space, they're in the room, they're affecting people. And how are they relevant then for educational processes? I think this is what I understood from your question. And how do we also integrate them into educational processes? I think the examples that we show are very much coming from an experience that we, in our case researchers, we introduced well, an explorative space to educators, like to try out different methods themselves, and also to apply them then in their own educational contexts. So in all of the cases, they were sort of, this was the invitation to try something out, to approach, to put a focus on the embodied dimension of education, and to enlarge that even more, to focus one's not only on skills, competence, and sort of cognitive learning, but to also integrate and shift the focus on the embodied dimension. I think emotions, we placed a lot of it, well, attention to the emotions because they are kind of tellers, or they are telling of when am I affected of something? How do I respond to this? And that not every student enjoys or is by default responsive to these aesthetic methods. There is a lot of shame, there can be irritation, there can be even resistance to these methods. And I think all of those reactions were just as important and also as contributing as, you know, a playfulness and playfully engagement with the opportunity. So that perhaps first as first response, and then the research of course went a step further by reflecting how are these methods not only received but also playing it back to the students themselves, and seeing what aspects, like how do you relate this, or how is this part and parcel, or like a really like the core of education perhaps, to engage responsively with what is happening, so that emotions are not only there in the space, of course, but also to allow or to engage with them as part of educational processes, so that they are not muted for sure. But I think you also have a second aspect that are we competent enough to respond to these emotions once they are out of the box in a way? And I think this is the next step, that teachers in their training actually need to be introduced to these kind of, to being perhaps also furious or angry themselves, to be responsive as a teacher. And that this is a very much a task or a development in teachers' education. And I think that's another important point in the project, that educators are also in need of learning how to reflect their own embodied reactions, and how to not contain but also to hold spaces of that. And I think we cannot take it as for granted. I would agree with you on that. We cannot take for granted that people are capable of that immediately, but that this is a learning experience. And I think that as we are focused on embodied democracy, it's also part, it's like the educators are also part of a learning process. And perhaps Monica, you can add.
Yeah, I think I could just shift it a little bit more towards education for democracy, and what does it mean for democracy in the future and democratic citizens. I think one very important part of this, and I didn't highlight it enough in the presentation, is developing sense of belonging. Because when you think that you belong to some community, you want to be part of that community, and you are more prepared to take your responsibility for that community. People, when they come into institution, into the class, into the school, into the higher education institution, and if they come and they're not allowed to show their identity, who they are, they don't feel that they are welcomed in this institution as themselves, but they are just one actor that is helping to move educational process till the end. They don't feel like they belong, and that is often in ECCS and other similar research shown as an element why they do not participate. Because participation is very much connected with this sense that I belong somewhere and I want to change it. And another important thing I see as introducing emotions is when you introduce emotions, it's much harder than just say, yes, democracy is everybody can vote. When you introduce the emotion, you can just see that something makes somebody angry without following the dialogue. And what is democracy if it's not a dialogue of talking? And people always say, like in big democracies, it is important that we talk, that we discuss about differences. We don't have to have the same opinions, but we can't move further if we don't talk. So yes, introducing emotions in the class, in the school, where is the first community of students and teachers, we help them to learn in the safe space how to use dialogue, to ask for their rights, and to understand their responsibilities. And what they will learn in this little community, then they will be able to, these competencies, move further to the bigger and bigger and bigger communities. So this class is their first community where they are able to learn how to hear different perspectives, to learn how to respond when they do not feel comfortable about something, to learn how emotion is sometimes connected to how they are raised and not what they think. And these are very, very important competencies for democratic citizens that often are not taught in education.
Okay, thank you both, and thank you, Carsten, for your question.
Can I make 2 comments on this?
Yeah.
First on this, for me, the important thing is how we can introduce emotions or handle emotions in democratic processes, not in education processes, in democratic processes. And we know, for example, from all the issues of fake news and the distributions of fake news in the internet community, that it's most related to emotion and moral information, which is not always true, but is circling around on high velocity. So my question in principle is, I agree with you that you need emotions also for democracy. But the question is, what are you really doing with your emotions in democratic dialogues? How you handle your emotion so that it not comes to a aggressive confrontation, a permanent aggressive confrontation in the democratic processes. This is the core of my question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can I say something? I'm from the ACE project as well.
Yes, you can.
Maybe add to what Monica and Lea has already said, because I understand what, or I think that I understand what Carsten is asking for, that how do we connect this to kind of a larger societal questions if we not only but deal with these issues in a classroom setting. But I'm thinking that this is very much about agency, that doing the things that we have been doing in our research and giving voice to the students, and also giving them possibilities, and also for the teachers, giving the possibility to show themselves as whole persons, and also with all these emotions, is also showing them that they have this agency of being the whole persons in the school educational setting, which makes them feel also perhaps that they are able to be or they have agency also in other settings in the society, not only in the school setting. But if we already in the educational process kind of educate them to be passive learners and not like co-creators of knowledge and knowing. I think that we lose a lot in kind of growing them as active citizens in their future lives. But of course, this is a long process. So the question is that how we could make the change now, here and now, because we are in a very we are living in a very bad moment in Europe at the moment. So I understand that you perhaps are looking for more speed up the process, perhaps. I don't know.
I would thank you, Susan. I think I also want to add, if we look at social movements and also into protests, if we look into people who are already engaged politically, I think what we also find is that that there is a lot of uncertainty about futures, like people live into very uncertain futures right now. They are confronted with also sort of closing moments when we look at climate crisis, for instance. Like there are so many moments of narrowing futures into moments of hopelessness, uncertainty, or also anger, understandably. And I think we also have sort of like a generational dialogue that's necessary here. So I think that I can add, and I think when the ICIT project focuses on educational context is to reach as many people as possible, and not to reach certain groups that already are engaged, but to really sort of bring it down to everyone, to infiltrate education with sort of the understanding of democratic interaction as embodied and sort of by involving people. I think this is what I can add, and I'm not sure I can answer, like I can answer differently to your question, because I would agree that it's important, but I would also say, like, there is a radius of action that's enabled or that's opened through reaching into educational systems and through changing them. But of course, there's a much larger understanding of democratic action and also political participation that we didn't include.
Thank you all for your very good points. We are already running out of time, but I would like to address my last question, and I hope this is not too big, too broad. But if I understood it correctly, somehow you also think, if I'm not right, please correct me, that hierarchies need to change a bit, or we need to rethink which type of hierarchies we need in school settings. And my question would be, how can we engage this kind of rethinking of hierarchies? Would this mean we don't have any hierarchies anymore in school systems, in learning contexts? So. Yeah.
I mean, this specific question was very interesting for us because we are coming from very different educational systems and national contexts. And when we start to discuss it, we always start from different contexts, and a conclusion leaves us back there. We have different examples, but we did many times found that with hierarchies, there is always this feeling of risk going outside what you are known to do. So we don't say this is this kind of hierarchy, it's professor-teacher, or it's a hierarchy between rational knowledge and emotional knowledge, or hierarchy between words and numbers. It's not important. It's always that somehow people feel who is somehow higher, and it's risk to move out and to show what you really think.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we found a common language in different countries. It was always coming back to the question, why do you think that now you are not allowed in this moment to show your opinion, or you are allowed, but you are not completely comfortable with it, or you are maybe too allowed to show it, so you don't want to show it anymore? And those were always moments where people needed to think about risk they are taking and being, and it was always challenging for us to create safe space for them to take that risk. So I think then when I talk about hierarchies, it was very much present, this idea of person, of practice, and of structure. Because in all of these 3 levels, you should be feeling safe to take that risk. Because if even on one of these levels you feel that risk is too big, you will not going to take it. And that was very important. And in the talks about hierarchy, we always move through all of these 3, because yes, even if professor is allowing you to say so, you could feel that maybe here is somebody who is going to be your future principal, and she is not going to be comfortable with you saying that. Or you just had previous bad experiences where you risk it and it didn't end good. And for these moments of hierarchy, the drama was very good method, because it helped people to move themselves in a different role. And in that role, they didn't feel so self-connected, and they were able to take that risk in some other role and later connected with themselves. So we had in many cases this imagination and drama and following people, and that was very useful for them to see them what would be if they took that risk and how to deal with it.
Okay, thank you very much. I would have some more questions, but we are already late. So I would say thank you both very, very much for this interesting presentation. We see you then in Barcelona for the conference on the 20th and 21st of November. I'm very much looking forward to all the discussions we will have there. So thank you both, and also the participants here, for joining us today. And I'm very much looking forward to meet you all in person soon.
Thank you for inviting us. It was very nice, to discuss a little
Yes.
bit about our project.
Also from my side, thank you very much also for discussing.